Ducati Monster. The Ducati Monster first appeared in 1993 during a difficult period for Ducati. At the time, the company needed a motorcycle that was cheaper to build but still carried the strong identity of the brand. Instead of creating an entirely new machine, Ducati combined parts from existing motorcycles. The frame came from a sport bike, the engine came from another model, and the bodywork was kept very simple. What they created accidentally became one of the most influential motorcycles ever made. The Monster introduced many riders to Ducati for the first time. Unlike fully fared superbikes, it exposed the engine and steel trellis frame. That raw mechanical appearance gave the motorcycle a very honest look. Riders could see almost every major component without large plastic panels hiding them. The design felt aggressive without trying too hard. One reason the Monster became so successful was its balance between performance and everyday usability. Ducati motorcycles were often associated with racing and demanding riding positions, but the Monster felt more relaxed. Riders sat upright, the handlebars were wider, and the motorcycle worked better in city traffic. At the same time, it still delivered the deep sound and strong acceleration Ducati fans expected. Over the years, the Monster lineup expanded into many engine sizes. Smaller versions attracted beginners, while larger models became extremely powerful street machines. Some versions focused on comfort while others leaned closer to racing performance. Despite all the changes, Ducati always kept the central identity of the Monster intact. The Monster also shaped the entire naked bike market. Many motorcycle companies later introduced stripped-down street bikes inspired by the same idea. Even today, when people think about naked motorcycles, the Ducati Monster is usually one of the first names that comes to mind. Ducati Panigale. The Panigale became Ducati's flagship superbike family when it replaced the long-running 1198 series in 2011. Named after Borgo Panigale, the district in Bologna where Ducati is based, the motorcycle represented a major shift in the company's design and engineering philosophy. Ducati wanted a machine that looked futuristic while pushing performance to a completely new level. One of the biggest changes was the move toward advanced electronics. Earlier superbikes relied more heavily on rider skill alone, but the Panigale introduced systems that constantly monitored the motorcycle during riding. Features like traction control, wheelie control, engine braking adjustment, launch control, and electronic suspension became central parts of the riding experience. The Panigale also changed visually. Earlier Ducati superbikes used a visible trellis frame, but the Panigale reduced that design dramatically. The motorcycle looked smoother, sharper, and more compact. Everything about it was focused on aerodynamics and speed. Even standing still, the bike appeared fast. As the years passed, Ducati introduced larger and more advanced Panigale versions. The company eventually moved from its famous V-twin engines to powerful V4 engines inspired directly by MotoGP racing. This change marked a huge moment in Ducati history because V-twins had defined the company for decades. Modern Panigale motorcycles can produce enormous horsepower while remaining surprisingly manageable because of electronic assistance systems. Riders can customize how aggressively the motorcycle behaves depending on road conditions or track use. In many ways, the Panigale feels less like a traditional motorcycle and more like a racing computer with wheels. The Panigale became important not only because of its performance but because it represented Ducati entering a new technological era. It showed how racing technology could move directly into production motorcycles. Ducati 916. The Ducati 916 arrived in 1994 and immediately changed the motorcycle world. Designed by Massimo Tamburini, the bike combined beauty, engineering, and racing performance in a way few motorcycles ever had before. Even people who knew nothing about motorcycles could recognize that the 916 was special simply by looking at it. The shape of the motorcycle was very different from most sport bikes of its era. The front looked narrow and sharp, the tail section was high and elegant, and the underseat exhausts became one of the bike's defining visual features. Everything appeared compact and perfectly balanced. But the 916 was not only about appearance. It was also an incredibly successful racing machine. Ducati used the bike to dominate the Superbike World Championship during the 1990s. Riders like Carl Fogarty helped turn the 916 into a racing legend. The motorcycle proved that beauty and performance could exist together without compromise. The riding experience of the 916 was intense. The riding position leaned heavily forward, the engine delivered strong low-end torque, and the handling demanded confidence from the rider. It was not designed for comfort. It was designed to feel alive. Even decades later, the 916 remains one of the most admired motorcycles ever created. Many modern superbikes are faster and more advanced, but the emotional impact of the 916 is difficult to replace. It became more than transportation or racing equipment. It became a symbol of Italian motorcycle artistry. Ducati Multistrada. The Multistrada was Ducati's answer to riders who wanted one motorcycle capable of doing many different jobs. Before its release, Ducati mainly focused on sport-oriented machines. The Multistrada expanded the company into the growing adventure and touring market while still keeping Ducati performance at its core. The first Multistrada models looked unusual compared to traditional touring motorcycles. They had tall riding positions, long suspension travel, and wide handlebars, but they still carried sporty Ducati styling. Some riders were unsure about the design at first, yet the motorcycle quickly gained popularity because of its versatility. A major strength of the Multistrada was comfort. Riders could travel long distances without the extreme physical strain associated with superbikes. The upright seating position reduced pressure on the wrists and back, while wind protection made highway riding easier. As technology improved, Ducati transformed the Multistrada into one of the most advanced touring motorcycles available. Electronic suspension systems could automatically adapt to road conditions and rider weight. Riding modes changed throttle response and traction control settings instantly. Later models even introduced radar systems for adaptive cruise control and blind spot detection. Despite being larger and more comfortable than Ducati's race-focused motorcycles, the Multistrada still felt surprisingly fast. Many riders described it as a sport bike disguised as an adventure motorcycle. It handled corners with a level of precision that most touring motorcycles could not match. The Multistrada became important because it proved Ducati could build motorcycles beyond pure racing machines while still preserving the excitement riders expected from the brand. Ducati Diavel. When Ducati introduced the Diavel in 2011, many people did not know how to classify it. It looked partly like a cruiser, partly like a muscle bike, and partly like a sport motorcycle. Ducati itself described it as a completely different category. The name Diavel comes from a dialect word meaning devil, and the motorcycle certainly looked intimidating. It had a low stance, wide rear tire, muscular fuel tank, and aggressive styling. From some angles it resembled a drag racing machine more than a traditional Ducati. Cruisers are usually associated with relaxed riding and steady power delivery, but the Diavel behaved very differently. It accelerated extremely quickly and handled corners much better than most motorcycles in its category. Ducati engineers wanted a bike that looked heavy and powerful but still moved like a sport machine. The Diavel also attracted riders outside Ducati's normal audience. Some people who found superbikes uncomfortable or impractical were drawn to the Diavel because it offered a more relaxed seating position without losing performance. Later versions became even more refined, with smoother electronics, lighter construction, and stronger engines. Ducati eventually expanded the concept further with the X Diavel, which leaned more deeply into cruiser styling while maintaining Ducati performance characteristics. The Diavel mattered because it showed Ducati experimenting with identity. Instead of following traditional motorcycle categories, the company created something unusual that blended multiple styles together. Ducati Scrambler. The Ducati Scrambler was introduced as a separate family of motorcycles designed around simplicity and fun. Ducati wanted to create bikes that felt less intimidating than their powerful superbikes. The result was a machine focused more on lifestyle, customization, and relaxed riding. The Scrambler name actually dates back to Ducati motorcycles from the 1960s and 1970s. Those earlier bikes were lightweight motorcycles built for both road and dirt riding. Modern Scramblers borrowed the spirit of those originals while using modern technology underneath. Visually, the Scrambler line used retro-inspired design. Round headlights, simple fuel tanks, flat seats, and exposed frames created a classic appearance. Riders could choose from many versions, each with slightly different personalities. Some Scramblers focused on urban riding while others leaned toward off-road styling. Models like the Desert Sled added longer suspension travel and rugged tires for rougher terrain. Cafe racer versions emphasized sporty looks and lower handlebars. One reason the Scrambler became successful was accessibility. Many Ducati motorcycles were expensive and powerful, but the Scrambler felt welcoming to newer riders. It delivered enough performance to stay exciting while remaining easier to ride in everyday situations. The Scrambler also became heavily connected to customization culture. Riders often modified seats, handlebars, exhausts, and paint schemes to create more personal motorcycles. Ducati supported this by offering many factory accessories. Rather than focusing purely on speed or racing success, the Scrambler focused on the emotional side of motorcycling. It was about enjoying the ride itself. Ducati Hypermotored. The Hypermotored looked unlike almost anything Ducati had produced before. Inspired by supermoto racing motorcycles, it combined tall suspension, lightweight handling, and aggressive street performance into one machine. The motorcycle sat high off the ground with wide handlebars and a narrow body. Riders had an upright position that provided excellent visibility and control. Compared to larger sport bikes, the Hypermotored felt compact and playful. Its personality was one of its defining features. The motorcycle encouraged quick movements, sharp cornering, and sudden bursts of acceleration. Riders often described it as energetic and mischievous rather than calm or refined. Unlike touring motorcycles designed for comfort over long distances, the Hypermotored focused on excitement during shorter, aggressive rides. It performed especially well in city environments and tight mountain roads where agility mattered more than top speed. Over time, Ducati introduced more powerful versions with improved electronics and suspension systems. Some models became extremely capable performance motorcycles while still maintaining the original playful character. The Hypermotored became important because it showed Ducati exploring a lighter and more unconventional style of riding. It was less about pure lap times and more about rider engagement and fun. Ducati Street Fighter. The Street Fighter was created by taking Ducati's superbike performance and removing most of the bodywork. What remained was a motorcycle that looked raw, mechanical, and aggressive. The original Street Fighter used engines and chassis technology closely related to Ducati's superbikes. Without large fairings, the motorcycle exposed more of its frame and engine, creating a muscular appearance. Riding the Street Fighter could feel intense. The lack of wind protection meant riders experienced speed more directly. Acceleration felt violent, and the upright seating position gave the motorcycle a completely different personality from a fully faired race bike. Early versions gained a reputation for being demanding machines. They produced enormous power while offering less aerodynamic stability than superbikes. Skilled riders loved the excitement, but inexperienced riders often found them intimidating. Modern Street Fighter models became more advanced with sophisticated electronics and V4 engines. Ducati managed to make them more controllable without losing the aggressive spirit that defined the lineup. The Street Fighter became popular because it combined superbike engineering with a more dramatic and exposed riding experience. It felt less polished and more emotional, which appealed strongly to certain riders. Ducati Desmacedesai RR. The Desmacedesai RR was one of the most ambitious motorcycles Ducati ever built. Released in limited numbers, it aimed to bring MotoGP technology directly to ordinary riders. At the time, most production motorcycles only borrowed ideas from racing. The Desmacedesai RR went much further. It used a V4 engine layout similar to Ducati's actual MotoGP race bikes and featured many exotic materials rarely seen on street motorcycles. The motorcycle was extremely expensive and highly exclusive. Only a small number were produced, making it instantly collectible. Owners were not simply buying transportation. They were buying a machine closely connected to professional racing technology. Its performance was extraordinary for its time. The engine revved extremely high, acceleration was brutal, and the motorcycle sounded more like a race machine than a normal street bike. However, the Desmosedici RR was not easy to ride casually. It demanded attention and skill from the rider. In many ways, it felt closer to a competition machine than an everyday motorcycle. The Desmosedici RR mattered because it demonstrated Ducati's racing ambitions more clearly than almost any other production model. It blurred the line between MotoGP engineering and public road motorcycles. Ducati Supersport. The Supersport line focused on balance. While Ducati's superbikes often prioritized maximum performance, the Supersport aimed to combine sporty character with everyday practicality. The riding position was more comfortable than a race-focused Panigale, making longer journeys easier. Riders still leaned forward slightly for sporty control, but without the extreme physical demands of a track motorcycle. The engine delivery was also smoother and more manageable. Instead of explosive top-end power, the Supersport emphasized usable performance across normal road speeds. Visually, the motorcycle still looked unmistakably like a Ducati. It carried sleek fairings, sharp headlights, and the signature Italian styling the company was known for. Many riders appreciated the Supersport because it felt realistic for daily use. It could handle commuting, weekend rides, and long-distance travel while still delivering exciting cornering performance. The Supersport became important because it filled the gap between comfortable touring motorcycles and aggressive superbikes. It offered a middle ground that many riders actually preferred for real-world riding conditions.